Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. I hope you're having a good week. Let's do a little bit of a class, a little bit of education. Maybe you already know this stuff. I promise there won't be any homework, all right? Because if there was, I wouldn't be doing it. Why break the habit of a lifetime? But anyway, you will no doubt have heard the phrase Queensberry Rules. What are the Queensberry Rules? You know, Queensberry Rules boxing. Wear your gloves. 10 counts. In a ring. Ropes, all that sort of thing. But what are they exactly, the Queensberry Rules? Well, I did a video a year or so ago, whenever it was, I can't even remember when I make these videos, but I explained in that video the background behind how the Queensberry Rules came to fruition. And John Sholto Douglas, the Marquess of Queensbury, 9th Marquess of Queensbury, was not the man who wrote them. But he was a Marquess, obviously, so he was part of the aristocracy, and he lent his name to the rules, which gave it a sort of bit of gravitas, so people were paying attention. But he didn't write them. Now, John Sholto Douglas was a real nasty piece of work. He was a thug, basically, with money. They treated his wife and his sons absolutely appallingly. Just a real nasty bit of work, probably mentally ill. Most famously of all, his son, Lord Alfred Douglas, Bosie, as his nickname was, had an affair with Oscar Wilde. This was in the late 19th century. Wilde was a very, very famous Irish playwright. Very much a sort of, I don't know what you'd call him, a contrary sort of almost like a punk rock guy of his day who rubbed against, standards of respectability of the time. But at the time, of course, homosexuality was illegal. And in fact, Wilde was married with 2 children, but he liked men, basically. And along comes Lord Alfred Douglas, who was about 20 years younger than Wilde. He was still a teenager when he met Wilde. Wilde was in his 30s. And they had an affair and so on. But he was definitely his father's son, Lord Alfred Douglas was, because he was prone to very, very violent, aggressive outbursts, a nasty bit of work. And he kind of coerced Wilde into suing his father because he hated his father and his father hated him because... John Sholto Douglas, the Marquess of Queensbury, accused Wilde of having an affair with his son, which he was. And Wilde tried to sue him for defamation of character because to be gay was illegal then. And in fact, it all came out that Wilde, in fact, was gay and had been shagging all sorts of rent boys and God knows what else. And Wilde ended up going to prison into Reading jail for a couple of years. And it broke him and he died when he was... 46, I think he was when he died. Died in Paris. He was as an exile, absolutely broken, penniless. So that was a little bit of a backstory about the Marquess of Queensbury. Not a nice guy, but he did lend his money and weight and title, if you like, to the rules of boxing. But what are the Queensberry Rules and who wrote them? They were actually written by a guy called John Graham Chambers, right? And back in the 1860s, there were 2 organisations that oversaw what we would now call boxing, fist fighting. One was the Amateur Boxing Association, which exists today. I don't know whether it was in the same format, probably not, because these things evolve and they become almost unrecognisable to what they once were. But there was also something called the Amateur Athletic Club, the AAC, which dealt with everything from horse riding, cricket. I think they oversaw the first FA Cup final in 1860 something, was it? I'm not up on football, but they took over the reins for boxing, fist fighting, and they got Chambers, John Graham Chambers, to write these rules. And in fact, the first contests, the first tournament, if you like, tournaments. By the way, this is all in the UK. I should point that out for anyone who's not from the UK. The first tournaments involved just 3 weight classes: lightweight, middleweight, and heavyweight. So those were the first 3 weight classes. lightweight, heavyweight, lightweight, middleweight, heavyweight. They took place in 1867. That tournament under the auspices of the Amateur Athletic Club. And again, Chambers was the one who came up with the rules, and he was the one that oversaw those tournaments. So the rules themselves, the Marquess of Queensberry Rules, as they are so called, written by Mr. Chambers, are, and I'm going to read them out to you. You take a fair stand-up boxing match in a 24-foot ring or as near the size as possible. So 24-foot ring or near as damn it. That's number one. Number two, no wrestling allowed. So using your fists and nothing else. No kicking or nothing like that. Number three, the rounds to be of 3 minutes duration and 1 minute's time between rounds, which we now know to be the case. And you're talking women's boxing, which is 2 minutes, but that's a video for another time. Number four, if either man falls through weakness or otherwise, he must get up unassisted. No putting the man up. The boxer has 10 seconds to allow him to do so. That's the opponent. 10 seconds to allow him to do so. The other man, meanwhile, must return to his corner, and when the fallen man is on his legs, the round is to be resumed and continued until the 3 minutes have expired. This all makes perfect sense to what we now accept as boxing. If one man fails to come to the scratch in the 10 count, in other words, if he fails to get up, this is the verbiage of the time, it shall be in the power of the referee to give his award in favour of the other man. So in other words, if you don't beat the 10 count, you're out. No problem. Number five, a man hanging on the ropes in a helpless state with his toes off the ground, all right, shall be considered down. So you can't grab all the ropes, hang on them with your feet off the ground. You've got to have 1 foot on the canvas, otherwise you're considered to be on the floor. Interesting rule that they had the foresight to think of that one. Number six, no seconds or any other person to be allowed in the ring during the rounds. Just the two fighters in the ring, no one else. And the fact they have to make up these rules, they have to actually put these in writing, if you like, shows the sort of chaos that existed in fist fighting before these came along, because all these sorts of things used to happen previously. Number eight, the gloves to be fair-sized basing gloves of the best quality and new. So you have to wear gloves, no bare knuckles, and they've got to be good quality and new. You're not allowed to wear ones that have got tears in them so you can cut someone. Or, they've got to be proper gloves, proper good quality gloves. Number nine, should a glove burst or come off, it must be replaced to the referee's satisfaction. And sometimes we do see that now. A glove bursts, it gets busted, they have to change it. The most famous example, if you're from the UK, is Muhammad Ali's torn glove against Henry Cooper in their first fight, just after Ali had been knocked down with a left hook. So yeah, the referee can insist actually on a glove being replaced. Number 10, a man on one knee is considered down, and if struck, is entitled to the stakes. I don't know what that means. If struck, is entitled to the stakes. Well, again, the language of the time is kind of getting the better of me there, but the point is made. A man on one knee is considered down. Yeah, we agree with that now, don't we? Number 11, that no shoes or boots with spikes or sprigs, which are wild wire nails, be allowed. You're not allowed to wear boots with spikes, because obviously it's treading someone's toe, and it's got to be proper footwear. Fair enough. These were the days, of course, before boxing boots existed. You'd wear something else. Number 12, the contest in all other respects to be governed by revised London prize ring rules. Okay, which, yeah. These existed before the Queensberry rules, and they were sort of, if you imagine a sort of prototype of boxing rules. So the Queensberry rules are building on the London prize ring rules. They are taking the London prize ring rules and saying, okay, in effect, they're saying they're not good enough. So to make this more civilized, we're going to introduce these rules, these sort of boundaries, if you like, to make everything fair and above board. I should have pointed out, actually, that when the Amateur Athletic Club had those initial tournaments in 1867. Did I say 87 before? It's 1867. Only certain people were allowed to fight, and that would be people essentially from the gentry and from the armed forces, people from the bar, lawyers and so on. It wasn't open to just anyone. You had to be licensed by this club, and this was essentially a toffs club. All right, you couldn't just wander off the street from, Whitechapel in the East End of London and say, "Oh, I'll have a go." And I'll piss off because this is a gentleman's club. So those are the Queensberry rules. All right, and very interesting, I think, because essentially they're kind of what we have now, which is what 140 years later? No, 160 years later. 160 years later, we've got basically the same thing. Very interesting. Very interesting. Just a quick mention of John Graham Chambers. In fact, he died young. He died in, I think it was 1883, and he was only 39 years old. So he kind of wrote these rules. He's still a young man when he wrote the rules, but he didn't live to be 40. And as we know, the Marquess of Queensbury has taken his work. Now, there were other people involved in the club, in that amateur athletic club, who chipped in, and it wasn't just Chambers sitting down with a piece of paper and scribbling them out. He consulted with other people. But this is just a quick video. I don't really have time to go into all that. But yeah, so that's the Queensberry rules for you, if ever you were wondering. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the video, you could hit the like button. That'd help us out. Hit the like button. And also subscribe if you're new. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I always appreciate your time. Looking forward to any comments that you're going to make. And bye for now.